They come to rewrite the history of a volatile land. They come to strike from above. It'll be one of the most massive air attacks since the end of World War II. Pilots from the United States and Europe will put their lives on the line as they bomb Serbian targets near the city of Sarajevo. For years, the innocent of Bosnia have suffered under the onslaught of the Serbs' artillery. Tonight, we'll see NATO attempt to reverse this country's fortune. Their mission, to shatter the Serbian war machine and stop this war once and for all. They call it Operation Deliberate Force.
It struck at midday when the people were out, using a brief lull in the heavy shelling to go to the market. A single mortar fell, and then blood was flowing in the street. The rescuers, in a frantic bid to sort the dead from the wounded, the survivors caught in yet another round of chaos and terror.
Late summer 1995. The end of the Cold War has not been marked by peace, but the bloodiest series of European conflicts in decades. Nations with diverse ethnic groups now find themselves fragmented, splintering, in a series of civil wars. Their world is ablaze. Perhaps the worst strife is in the Balkans, the former Yugoslavia. The most ethnically diverse republic in the region, Bosnia is inhabited by Muslims, Croatians, and Serbians. When Bosnia attempted to break away, there were many Serbs prepared to resist on behalf of their motherland. Encamped on the hills above Sarajevo, they obtained a huge cache of arms and artillery. And the terror rained down on the citizens of the city. Peaceful negotiations have consistently failed. Another approach will have to be taken. High in the hills of northern Italy sits one of the most active air bases in the world. Aviano Air Base, headquarters of America's 16th Air Force. It's home to over 4,000 flyers and support crew. For the next month, it will be the staging ground for a series of airstrikes. Strategic military attacks on the Serb-held sections of Bosnia. 1,600 sorties over 2 weeks. Pinpoint assaults that will rely on an awesome array of high-tech military hardware. It will be one of the largest air operations in Europe since World War II. Perfectly positioned to serve as a base for the strike, Aviano's air station is no more than 300 miles from Sarajevo. Aircraft carriers stationed in the Adriatic will add the force of their bombers. The entire operation is designed to bring Bosnia's Serbs to the negotiating table. With an all-out air blitz, Operation Deliberate Force. At the forefront of the attack is one of today's most technologically advanced fighters, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, the workhorse of the U.S. Air Force. The F-16 is a digital jet. Instead of steering with hydraulics, all of its controls are electronic, giving pilots instantaneous response. They call it fly-by-wire. Captain Brian Bearden has flown the Agile F-16 for over 8 years and has seen its role expand greatly. The other airplane central to the mission is the F-16's Marine Corps counterpart, the FA-18 Hornet.
At times, we can be tasked for a swing role. I can either put precision-guided munitions on a target, or I can be tasked to perform combat air patrol or an air-to-air mission. Or I can be tasked to do both in the same sortie.
The other airplane central to the mission is the F-16's Marine Corps counterpart, the FA-18 Hornet. The Marines fly a two-seat version of this aircraft.
One thing the F-18D has, it's actually a job for a two-seat airplane. You have the pilot can be eyeballs out, watch for threats on the ground. The WISO, Weapons Sensors Officer, can actually run the whole show. He can sit there and keep track of all the airplanes. He can also run the forward-looking infrared radar for target acquisition as well as air-to-air radar.
The two-seat Hornet's specialty is night operations. The cockpit is set up with infrared and night vision displays. But above all, the Hornet is one versatile airplane. It can handle both mid-air dogfights and long-range bombing runs. Yet despite the high-tech sophistication of these aircraft, they still need pilots. Strikes like Operation Deliberate Force are so complex, so demanding, that they require the most highly skilled aviators in the world. American pilots will be joined by an international group to fly crucial missions in deliberate force. In today's world, the United States cannot afford to act alone. They must work with its allies for true multinational support of this controversial operation. This morning, in the briefing room, pilots have gathered from Spain, France, Great Britain, and the Netherlands, just some of the countries in this NATO force. It won't be easy for any of them. Language and cultural differences are dangers for any team setting off on a multinational mission.
There are specific challenges that we face as F-16 pilots now because of the different nationalities of people that we fly with. We have French fighters airborne, we have Dutch fighters airborne, and more importantly, we have British controllers, AWACS controllers, and controllers from other countries that control the skies over Bosnia.
This international band of pilots is taking off into uncertain skies, trying to bring order to a chaotic region. And no one is sure just how they will fare. For this will be the first campaign fought entirely by air. There is skepticism about the effectiveness of airstrikes alone, but deploying a combat force of ground troops in Bosnia's rough terrain is out of the question. Peacekeeping is hard enough. No NATO country wants to see its sons and daughters die, fighting another country's civil war. The ghosts of Vietnam still linger, for that ground war cost the lives of over 58,000 Americans. Airstrikes will limit the amount of NATO casualties, but they are not always the most effective tactic. The region's foggy weather can play havoc, so it will be tough to hit targets. Mistakes will be more likely. And on this mission, there is zero tolerance for error. If NATO is the cause of just one misplaced bomb, if one innocent life is lost, then the entire mission will be deemed a failure in the eyes of the world community. This strategy of war by airstrikes is a large departure from years past. Early in this century, aircraft were used primarily for reconnaissance. It didn't take long before airplanes were employed in a much more aggressive way. During World War II, Allied troops shivered as German Stukas dive-bombed again and again during the attacks on Poland and France. Later, Germany would feel the power of the airstrike as well. American Mustangs and British Spitfires would fly no more than 50 feet off the ground, strafing German planes and exposed supply lines. The D-Day landings and the eventual victories in Europe and the Pacific were due in large part to the Allies' ability to control the air. Fighters and bombers shut down the Axis' ability to wage war and turn the tide of battle. As technology improved, so did the power of the airstrike. A new generation of jets was faster, tougher, more maneuverable. And the Cold War battle to dominate the skies kept pushing designers to create ever more advanced aircraft. Sophisticated birds of iron and steel. Mid-air combat was transformed into a high-tech, supersonic game of split seconds and lightning reflexes. These phantoms and intruders showed what modern air power was all about. By the time of Operation Desert Storm in 1991, it was a clear display of what massive air superiority could accomplish. By controlling the skies, the U.S.-led coalition force effectively shut down Saddam Hussein's ability to fight. One of the stars of the Gulf War was the F-117 stealth fighter. Under cover of night, stealth strike fighters were able to take out their targets virtually unseen by radar. Jagged, angular, with a shape more sci-fi than high-tech, they represented a new breed of airplane. Used during the initial attacks of an air war, with their special shape and radar-absorbent materials, F-117s were designed to breeze right by dangerous missile sites as they dropped precision bombs. In Desert Storm, the fighters conducted a long air campaign before the ground war ever started. For weeks, the coalition force bombed Iraqi troop positions, radar sites, and communication centers. By the time the ground war began, the Iraqis were blind, forced to defend themselves to the coalition's actions, with much of their military hardware in ruins. The country of Kuwait was liberated in less than 100 days, with minimal U.S. combat casualties. But Desert Storm was not won by air power alone. Ground troops were brought in to clinch the victory. for it's long been a military truism that an Air Force alone could never conquer an enemy. Airplanes had never been called on to win battles by themselves before, until now. Here in Bosnia, there will be no ground troops, only airstrikes. Operation Deliberate Force will be a tremendous gamble. It is clearly the safest route, but no one is sure if it's going to work. Now, everything rests on the shoulders of the pilots at Aviano Air Base. Late August, 1995. The once scenic land of Bosnia has been a battle zone for the past 2 years. UN peacekeepers have had little effect. The people endure as best they can in a war-torn land. But now, all that is about to change. Operation Deliberate Force is about to begin. The NATO pilots have their orders. Captain Bearden's squadron prepares to head into battle. They will be the first men to fly combat missions in Europe in 5 decades. NATO forces learned 2 lessons in Iraq: the value of precision weapons and the importance of a clear, well-defined plan. These lessons will be brought to bear here in Operation Deliberate Force.
First off, we wanted to take out their communication structure so they couldn't talk to each other. Then we wanted to hit their ability to wage war. And we were starting to hit more targets like bridges and lines of communication to prevent any reinforcements from moving around through the Republic of Srpska towards, say, for instance, Sarajevo.
On August 31st, Deliberate Force is airborne. Over 60 fighters scramble into the sky. Their goal, to destroy Phase 1 targets, communications and radar sites. The first attacks go off with precision. They're all a part of what the military terms SEAD.
SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense, that comes into play with surface-to-air missiles. And we carry the HARM, high-speed anti-radiation missile, and that's the best missile in the world against enemy air defense.
The HARM missile locks in on the energy of an active radar. Destroying Serbian radar is crucial for 2 reasons. It cripples their ability to detect incoming attacks and to fire radar-guided missiles. Joining the F-16 and the Hornet in the strike on Phase 1 targets is the EA-6B Prowler. The Prowler is a key component on the first wave of the air assault because it targets enemy electronics. Disrupting the Serbs' radar and radio signals cripples their ability to communicate.
One of the basics of any operation is to be able to communicate. If you can't talk, you can't fight. And when you say can't fight, it's not an absolute, but obviously you lose tremendous effectiveness.
Major Tom Dolan has been flying the Prowler for over 6 years. He knows its great ability to take out the eyes and ears of the enemy. The technique is simple, but the risk is high.
Yeah, the bad guys trying to shoot airplanes down, and the way they do that is they use radars and they guide missiles to the airplane, and what we do is we look for the radars and we try and jam them. It's like putting snow on your TV set before the days of cable. You know, your mom comes in, turns something on in the kitchen, and it puts snow on the TV. That's what we do. We put snow on the radar screens.
The Prowler requires a 4-man crew to find and destroy the target. The pilot in the left seat controls the stick and the throttles, while the co-pilot in the right seat is responsible for communication and navigation. The two electronics specialists in the back seat are charged with taking out the enemy radars. If they can't jam the Serbs' radar, then they'll destroy it with their HARM missiles. The idea is to win the information war before the real battle even begins. With no enemy radar, once NATO flyers start shooting, they will be unimpeded and very, very deadly. Over the first few days, Operation Deliberate Force rolls along. The destruction of Phase 1 targets goes off as planned. No NATO airplanes have been lost. Not a single non-military victim has been reported.
They're gone, sir.
In fact, the airstrikes have been remarkably precise. The days of large-scale carpet bombing tactics are long gone. Today's strikes go off with pinpoint accuracy. How is that possible? And how can air power be a decisive force if there's no one on the ground to control the battlefield? The answer to both questions lies in today's technology. As smart bombs have become more powerful and more accurate, they can cripple the enemy with just a few quick strikes.
In World War II, it took 500 sorties to pinpoint one building. In Vietnam, 5 sorties. Now, with today's technology, myself and the F-16 can pinpoint the target and destroy it with one sortie.
The secret lies in a series of high-tech inventions. The F-16, for example, carries an innovative device called Lantern for dropping precision weapons. Here in Bosnia, its integrated laser and infrared capabilities are making the job much easier for Major Robert Belichick and his team.
This targeting pod has 2 functions it gives us. One is it turns basically night into day. It gives us a IR image up in the cockpit of the target area we're looking at. Even when it's pitch black outside, I can get almost what looks like a day image, but it's in the IR spectrum of the target area, and that will help me then to guide bombs in.
The Lantern pod, the bottom line on it, it's the infrared portion of it that they're using for doing the targeting. They can basically laze the target themselves. So our F-16s, like during deliberate force, we could drop a precision-guided munition, sometimes from 4 or 5 miles away, even further, sometimes 6 miles away, right in on the target.
So I can fire a laser, and then my bombs can follow the laser spot on down to the target.
What that does is that significantly decreases the chance for collateral damage.
It's pinpoint accuracy, provided that the laser is always marking the target. Things like weather, cloud, smoke can disrupt the laser a bit, but that's the pilot's job, is to make sure it stays right on.
This allows me as an F-16 pilot to pinpoint the corner of the building of the target that I want to hit and destroy specifically that target.
Other aircrafts have completely different weapons guidance systems. Like the F-15E Strike Eagle. It's the descendant of the most celebrated fighter in the skies, an air-to-air dogfighter known as the Eagle. In Operation Desert Storm, the Eagle was responsible for over 2/3 of all aerial Iraqi kills.
Let's reset for now and take a look at the fade.
Dagger copy.
Today, with the added ability to drop precision weapons, it has become the Strike Eagle. The co-pilot in the backseat will guide in smart bombs using an infrared television. He can literally steer the bombs with a joystick, looking at the target the whole way in, aiming it with a camera on the weapon's nose to deadly effect.
How you doing, man? Good to see you today. You all right?
In early September, Bearden, Belichick, and their F-16s are stepping up the attack, preparing to take on Phase 2 targets.
Outstanding.
But now, the Serbs are waiting for them, and the skies over Bosnia become filled with hazards. Operation Deliberate Force gets highly dangerous. September 6th, 1995, a week into Operation Deliberate Force. One by one, a series of communication targets have been destroyed. Now, NATO fighters turn their sights on Phase 2 targets, like supply and ammunition storage facilities, to cripple the Serbian war effort. As pilots continue their precision airstrikes, diplomats are gaining ground at the negotiating table. Serbs have finally been pressed into serious talks with the leaders of Muslim and Croatian factions. While the negotiators continue to shuttle from camp to camp in an attempt to seal an agreement, NATO steps up the pressure. The bombing campaign moves into high gear as 13 Tomahawk missiles are launched from warships in the Adriatic. Surprisingly, these missiles are not as powerful as the smart bombs dropped from fighters. But arriving out of nowhere, shocking and destructive, they take a toll on Serbian morale. 7 days into the war, NATO is looking for a quick resolution to Operation Deliberate Force. So far, there are no NATO losses, but the odds increase with every sortie. And the longer airstrikes continue, the greater the threat to the many UN peacekeepers on the ground in Bosnia. There are hundreds of peacekeeping forces stationed throughout the country of Bosnia. Keeping peace is much more hazardous than waging war. A peacekeeper is only allowed to fire after he's been fired on. It's a tense situation. The previous spring, Bosnian Serbs overran their positions. Surrounded and overwhelmed, more than 350 of the peacekeepers were captured and used as human shields by the Serbs, who demanded an end to the airstrikes. There was no choice but to call off the missions so that the peacekeepers could be released. NATO was humiliated. But this time around, for the UN peacekeepers, there is protection. A guardian keeping an eye on them from the skies above. The EC-130 is a high-tech watchdog, an airborne command, control, and communications platform, or ABCCC. Inside its large bay are up to 20 Air Force officers working a massive bay of state-of-the-art communications gear.
We can provide instantaneous communications with each one of the players. We bring to this platform experience from other platforms. Myself, I flew fighters and reconnaissance airplanes, and so I've been at the other end of what we're doing. The people that we're talking to out there, I've been in the cockpit of that airplane, talking to ABCCC, talking to the people on the ground. So the battle staff is made up of a number of people with varied backgrounds. We have weapons controllers, we have intelligence personnel. They want people like this, with this kind of background, to be able to be in this airplane so that we can provide that information, that background, to the rest of the battle staff, and it just increases the situational awareness of the airplane.
As the mission continues, the EC-130 will play a key role, functioning as an eye in the sky, getting information to ground troops. It will keep the peacekeepers informed of Serbian actions, and with any luck at all, prevent catastrophes like the hostage taking of a few months before. But the biggest threat to Operation Deliberate Force is not random kidnappings. It's the danger posed by Serbian surface-to-air missiles. While the Serbs may lack a wide array of high-tech equipment, they do have a small cache of radar-guided missiles. All it takes is one lucky shot to bring down a fighter jet and its crew.
Although the types of surface-to-air munitions that they have in Bosnia are the same as they had in Desert Storm, they're nowhere near the number of surface-to-air threats in Bosnia as it was in Desert Storm. It doesn't change, however, the fact that when they are shooting at you, you still get really excited.
As Bearden and his fellow pilots return to their next round of missions, there are a number of factors working against them. In Bosnia, fog, low clouds, and bad fall weather all make navigation extremely difficult. While pilots may have an idea where missiles and targets lie, the slightest navigational error could have devastating consequences. Recently, though, satellite technology has made the pilot's life easier. Highly detailed pictures taken from space now give flyers a tremendous wealth of knowledge. Knowledge they can master through a unique system known as PowerScene.
This would be a threat.
This is the PowerScene. PowerScene is a virtual reality mission rehearsal system where a pilot can come in here and fly his mission before he actually flies his mission.
Now I'll take you into stick fly. Wherever you point your nose, you're going to fly.
It's where we take imagery of various areas, and we allow the pilot to actually pre-fly the mission. He gets to see what the target looks like, gets to see what the terrain going into the target, planning from the IP to the actual target, what it exactly looks like. Familiarizes him with the target instead of just giving him what we used to in the past was just a map and a picture.
We're coming down through downtown, and we can add in, obviously, you're probably looking at some of those grommets there. We can manually input those to identify key features or key terrain or buildings, in this case, the U.S. Embassy, the Holiday Inn. You may wonder why that's there. That's where we had some personnel staying. We can do another unique thing with PowerScene, and that is we can input threats into the system. We can use any SAM missile system, and if we know where it is on the ground, we can put that location into the database, and it will generate a threat dome like that. And that dome there now is telling that pilot to stay out of that area because there's a radar-guided SAM threat in that area. Our wing commander flew one of the missions. He flew it on PowerScene first a few times, and when he came out and through the clouds onto his target, he said if it hadn't been for PowerScene, he probably would have missed the target because it looked exactly like he had saw it on PowerScene, so he was able to not waste any time at all and pick the target out.
But for all the preparation and all the planning, pilots must be prepared for the worst. And as pilots head into their next round of missions, they take special precautions. As Major Belichick and Captain Bearden get dressed, they confront the real possibility of being shot down.
First thing we do, we sanitize. So I take off all my patches, get rid of my wallet. I keep some money when I fly over Bosnia. You never know, it could come in handy. First, we wear a G-suit, just to help protect us against G's in the turning fight, should we get into one. Next thing we wear is a survival vest. In the survival vest, we have a radio, so if we go down, we can talk to other airplanes while we're on the ground. We also have some flares and other survival gear. Next thing we wear is the parachute harness, and this is a horseshoe collar life raft that automatically inflates should I hit salt water. Take my helmet, carry all this out to the jet. Since it's summertime, I personally don't wear a jacket. Some folks do, for if they go down the mountains or something like that, but I plan to survive without it, so I dress for success as opposed to egress.
The danger of being brought down is always present, although pilots don't like to talk about it much.
During deliberate force, we saw quite a bit of anti-aircraft shot at us, and throughout the history of denied flight, there have been several instances of surface-to-air missiles shot at Avion aircraft.
A radar-guided surface-to-air missile homes in on an aircraft's radar emissions, and no jet is maneuverable enough to dodge a missile. But every pilot has one simple defense.
On both sides of the airplane, we carry chaff and flares. What they essentially are is decoys. The chaff comes out and it simulates airplanes. So as each little chaff bundle comes out, it's tiny pieces of fiberglass. It spreads out, and on radar, it'll look like another airplane. So I can turn myself into 10 airplanes, essentially. Then the missiles doesn't know which one to go at.
But radar-guided missiles are not the only dangers in Bosnia. Small heat-seeking missiles are also spread throughout the countryside, and in greater numbers. Easily hidden, they're much harder to destroy, since they don't need working radar stations. These missiles simply lock onto the heat signature of a passing fighter.
For heat-seeking missiles that are trying to come after my engine, I drop flares, and now the missiles don't know which one's the real one and which one's not. So they're decoys, and we've used those, and we've had to use those a few times in Bosnia to avoid missiles.
These are the dangers Bearden and Belichick will face as they move out for one final mission. A mission that may be the toughest of all. NATO headquarters has decreed that it's time to move Operation Deliberate Force into Phase 3. But the tools the pilots have remain the same.
We have 2 aircraft, 8 missiles between us, and 4 bombs between us to effectively put bombs on target and come home alive, as I briefed.
Although there's a strong chance their target area will be heavily guarded by missiles, the pilot's mission is critical to the success of Operation Deliberate Force. It is the final stage of the campaign. If it succeeds, it may well crush the Serbian war machine. The people of Bosnia are counting on them, for Bosnia is dangerous ground, a harsh and unforgiving land that has claimed its share of victims. September 14, 1995. Bosnia holds its breath as Operation Deliberate Force rolls on. It's day 15 of the mission. Two weeks of flying, 2 weeks of attacks, and now it all comes down to this. NATO has damaged and destroyed Serbian installations across the country, communication centers, munitions depots. Now their sights are set on Phase 3 targets, roadways, bridges, transportation choke points. Anything to crush Serbian supply lines and stifle their attempts to rearm their soldiers. The surface-to-air missiles are still out there, still a threat to pilots like Bearden and Belichick. But these bridges must be blown. And so the pilots take off into the morning, bringing the battle home to the Serbians. Soon, the skies are lit up with the thunder and fury of NATO's warriors.
I got the target on my nose. We have bomb splash, bomb splash. Everyone. Stand by. Missile well for it. All right, send in another one. All right, you're doing all right. Got another one. I got a track. Missile away. Your missile for it.
Finally, success. Phase 3 targets have been destroyed, and best of all, no pilots have been lost. By 10 a.m., The flyers have been ordered back to base as NATO headquarters tallies the results.
We flew over 1,600 combat sorties into Bosnia in a little over a 2-week period. The proudest thing is, first of all, it worked. It brought the warring factions to the peace table, but number two, we didn't have one bomb drop on the wrong target the whole time out of Aviano.
Operation Deliberate Force has worked, and over the coming months, it bears fruit. An agreement is signed in Dayton, Ohio. Peace has finally arrived. Throughout Bosnia, the people take to the streets. And in December 1996, over 6,000 peacekeepers arrived to enforce the Dayton Peace Accord. This will be the largest mobilization of troops in Europe since World War II. But stationing peacekeepers in Bosnia has its own set of dangers. Peacekeepers will be responsible for keeping warring factions separated. There's always the chance they will be in the crossfire if the truce breaks down. And so once again, Bearden, Belitic, and the forces of Aviano are on alert. A new job is about to begin.
We've continued to fly missions over Bosnia. We're flying around 30 a day out of Aviano today. We'll continue to do that until told otherwise, or the troops withdraw. And at that time, it's everybody's guess as to what's going to happen. But we see this lasting for quite a while still until they have a real stable situation on the ground in Bosnia.
The Balkan region is still one of the most volatile in the world. Because war can erupt at any given moment, Aviano remains on constant alert. The dangers are very real. But this time, the pilots of Aviano will have a whole new type of armament at their disposal. A 21st century weapon that's never been seen on the battlefield before. In the future, if NATO forces have to launch an attack like Operation Deliberate Force, they will have even more help from technology. In 1995, fighters were dropping bombs with the assistance of a laser. Today, they can do it with the help of global positioning satellites. GPS guidance has come with the development of the Joint Direct Attack Munition, known as JDAM. JDAM is a guidance kit that can be placed on existing dumb bombs. It's demolition by remote control. Pilots no longer have to keep a laser on their target. Now, they can simply drop the bombs and head home. Satellites will steer it to its destination. It's the next wave of computer-guided destruction. But the immediate concern of Aviano is not the responsibility of mounting a large-scale air attack. The more pressing reality is the danger to the many United Nations peacekeepers on the ground. And so week by week, Captain Bearden and his fellow pilots are sent out to keep an eye on them.
Although it's a training sortie today, we're over Bosnia, and at any point we can be tasked for real time because we do have troops on the ground, and if they come under fire, it's our job to see that the fire stops.
Should peacekeepers come under fire, the jets of Aviano will scramble to provide what's known in the military as close air support. It's never an easy assignment. The pilot must have the skill and reflexes to react instantly to a call from the troops below, spot the menace quickly, and take it out on a single pass. Sophisticated fighters like the F-16 and the Hornet, for all their high-tech gear, are not the best choice for close air support. The best choice, the most effective choice, is the A-10 Thunderbolt. They call it the Warthog. It's not the sexiest looking airplane, but it's definitely the toughest.
I think most hog pilots really love the A-10. It is slow, and it does get frustrating when you're not moving very fast, but there's very few other airplanes that I would like to fly into combat, and it's because it has two engines, so you could lose an engine and still get out of the country. It also has the armor around the cockpit to protect you, up to 37 millimeter rounds for protection. And it's a shame that the A-10's performance in Desert Storm is already being forgotten because it was quite a superstar in Desert Storm, and it brought a lot of pilots out of the battle area and brought a lot of pilots home after taking some pretty heavy damage. So I wouldn't want to fly many other aircraft into combat.
The A-10 is like a tank with wings. And precisely because it isn't a fast-moving jet, it has a much easier time picking out ground-based threats like armored vehicles. Once the Warthog pilot sees the target, he uses his slow speed and maneuverability to his advantage. After the first pass, the Warthog is still in position to turn around and come right back.
The A-10 is a very highly maneuverable airplane. It's got that straight wing and a high lift airfoil. It's designed to do tight turns. It can turn inside of a 2,500-foot turn radius at full speed. It's highly maneuverable.
Once in position, the Warthog can bring its formidable weapons to bear. The aircraft comes equipped with laser-guided, armor-penetrating bombs. For air-to-air defense, AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles are located under its wings. But an A-10 pilot's preferred weapon is a Gatling gun, mounted right on its nose.
Our primary weapon, the one we like to use the most, is the Galway 30mm cannon. Fires 4,200 rounds a minute, which is 70 in a second if you think about it, which is just an unbelievable. About a half-second burst will put 40 rounds into a tank and immobilize it for life. It's a pretty effective weapon. It's real easy to operate with a gun because you don't have to hit a lot of fancy parameters. And it's basically a point-and-shoot weapon that's very deadly in terms of penetrating armor and taking apart tanks.
A-10s are not the only jets providing close air support. Fighters are also flying this mission, but for all their high-tech gear, they're not well suited for this job.
Hey, Banger copy.
F-16s and Hornets are not as heavily armored as an A-10 and must fly faster into the target area to decrease the chance of being hit.
Banger copy.
But swooping down from the skies at 600 miles an hour, it can be hard to pick out a small moving target.
Copy that. At command post 10, please let me know when your final running.
They must rely on a forward air controller, or FAC, for assistance. The FAC is a soldier or pilot on the ground who helps guide the fighter jets into position electronically.
The ground troops have an equipment on the ground to identify targets, get this very, very accurate target data, and transmit it again via modem to the F-16. When it comes up into our F-16, it's so accurate that our targeting pod is tied to that steer point, and when we select the steer point, the targeting pod goes right to the target. Again, because it's accurate, it decreases our time in the threat area almost 30%. What does that mean? We're being shot at about 30% less time as we're trying to identify a target, simulate putting bombs on target, and getting out of the area.
If the FAC is having trouble giving an electronic signal from the ground, one of the pilots can fire off a rocket as a guide.
Right here we have the LAO 131 rocket pod. It holds 7 2.75 rockets. We use it for spotting targets as part of our FAC mission. Currently, we're the only F-16 unit with a FAC mission. In a perfect world, the pilot can always see the target. Where these come in is like if the target's obscured by something, such as foliage like trees, and somebody on the ground's trying to tell them where the target is. A lot of times there's no landmarks for the pilot to go off of. We'll fire one off, we'll get our puff of white phosphorus, and that's what the pilot uses to orient as a landmark of where to drop his munitions to hit his target that he's assigned.
Once the ground-based FAC steers in the first airplane, its pilot will take over the job as airborne FAC for the rest of the jets coming in behind.
All right, sounds good. I got some tapes for you.
And this morning, that's the task Major Belichick is preparing for.
Today's mission, I'm an AFAC. So what I will do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to refuel, and then I'm going to go into Bosnia. I'm going to work with a TAC-P. That's a guy on the ground who knows the local area and the targets and the threats that he's dealing with that day. He'll talk me on, I'll get a feel for the area, and then the first fighters I'm going to control today are 2 French Mirages. They'll come in, and I'll talk them onto the target, and I will shoot a rocket down to mark the target, where then they would deliver bombs on the target.
Though the threat has been reduced, the job goes on. Since the end of Operation Deliberate Force, the pilots of Aviano Air Base have continued to stand watch over the volatile Balkan region. They still fly dozens of missions every day as they keep vigil over the fragile peace in Bosnia. Day to day, week to week, the situation in Central Europe keeps changing. No one can guess what the future will hold. But it is becoming clear that the battles of the future may well look more and more like Operation Deliberate Force, a war of airstrikes. Most important, Captain Bearden, Major Belitik, and the flyers of Aviano have brought relief to a weary and battered land. Bosnia and warfare itself may never be the same again.